Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Today we're going to be diving deep into canine separation anxiety.
Yeah.
I know a lot of our listeners have dogs, and I myself have a dog, and separation anxiety is something that can really be a problem for a lot of people, and it can be really hard to deal with.
Yeah, and be very stressful.
So we're going to be using this helpful guide on common canine behavioral issues to kind of get to the bottom of this. And you, of course, you're
I've got a lot of thoughts on this topic.
an expert on this, so I'm really excited to get into it with you.
Yeah, I think separation anxiety is one of those things that a lot of people kind of misunderstand or oversimplify. They just think, oh, the dog misses you and they whine at the door, but it's a lot more complex than that.
So what is it then? What is separation anxiety?
Well, I mean, at its core, it's a state of really intense distress and panic that a dog experiences when they're separated from their attachment figure.
Okay, so it's not just like the dog's a little sad, you're gone. It's like a genuine
It's a fear response.
panic attack almost.
Yeah, it can manifest in a lot of different ways. You'll see destructive behavior, excessive vocalization, inappropriate elimination.
Yeah, and our source here, it talks about all kinds of different causes for this, and some of them seem pretty obvious, and some of them seem a little bit more surprising.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that cause this in the first place?
Well, I mean, sometimes it can be as simple as boredom. The dog is just not stimulated enough when they're left alone, and so they find ways to entertain themselves.
If they don't have anything to do, they'll find something to do.
Exactly, and that might be chewing on your favorite shoes or barking at the window for hours on end.
Right.
But then there are other cases where it's rooted in something deeper, like maybe the dog has a history of being abandoned or rehomed multiple times, and so they have this underlying anxiety about being left alone. Yeah, or it could be something like a change in routine.
Oh, okay.
If the dog is used to being with their owner all the time and then suddenly the owner starts working long hours or going out more often, that can trigger separation anxiety.
It's like they don't know what to expect anymore, so they get anxious.
Exactly. It's all about predictability for dogs. They feel safe and secure when they know what's coming next. Yeah. And when that predictability is disrupted, it can really throw them off.
So we've got kind of those basic things, boredom and just sort of like not knowing what to expect. But our source also mentions things like medical conditions.
Right.
And even things like dementia in dogs can contribute to this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any kind of underlying medical condition that causes pain or discomfort can make a dog more anxious in general.
Okay.
And that anxiety can then be amplified when they're left alone.
Makes sense.
As for cognitive decline, like canine dementia, that can definitely lead to separation anxiety because the dog might be confused, disoriented, they don't understand why they're being left alone, and they can't remember that their owner is coming back.
That's heartbreaking.
It is. It's really tough to see.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're talking about all these causes, and, I think a lot of people listening are probably thinking, oh my gosh, my dog does that.
Right.
How do I even know if this is like a little bit of whining at the door or if this is a genuine issue that I need to deal with?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the key is to look for a cluster of symptoms. Okay. So if your dog just whines a little bit when you leave and then settles down and goes to sleep, that's probably not a big deal. But if you're seeing multiple signs of distress, like destructive behavior, excessive vocalization, pacing, panting, trembling.
Okay, so if it's like multiple things.
If it's excessive, if it's prolonged, if it's causing damage to your home or to the dog themselves, then it's definitely something to be concerned about.
And then there's those really sad cases where the dog is so stressed out that they have accidents in the house.
Yeah, that's a classic sign of separation anxiety. And it's not because the dog is being disobedient. It's because they're literally losing control of their bladder and bowels due to stress.
Yeah, so it's not just, they're being naughty. It's like,
no,
they literally can't help it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got some signs to look out for, and we're starting to get a better understanding of what causes this.
Right.
So what do we do about it?
Well, the first step is always to rule out any underlying medical conditions.
Okay.
So a trip to the vet is in order.
Okay.
They can do a thorough physical exam, run some blood work, and make sure there's nothing physically wrong that's contributing to the anxiety.
So don't just jump on Google and try to figure this out yourself. Like, no. Go to a professional.
No, absolutely. Professional guidance is essential because every dog is different, and what works for one dog might not work for another.
Yeah. Okay. So we've ruled out any medical conditions, and we've talked to the vet, and they say, yep, this is separation anxiety.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that we can actually manage this and make it easier for our dog?
Well, there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Okay.
But there are a number of different approaches that can be very effective.
Okay.
And often it's a combination of strategies that works best.
Okay.
So one thing that's really important is to create a positive association with being alone.
Okay.
So instead of making a big fuss when you leave and come back, try to keep your departures and arrivals low key.
So don't make a big deal that you're good.
Don't make it a big dramatic event.
Yeah.
Just slip out quietly, and when you come back, greet your dog calmly.
Okay.
And then you can gradually start leaving them alone for longer and longer periods of time.
So start with a minute and then 5 minutes and then...
Start small and gradually work your way up.
Okay. And our source also talks about things like pheromone diffusers and things like that. Do those actually work?
Yeah, those can be helpful for some dogs.
Okay.
They release calming scents that mimic natural pheromones.
Okay.
And that can help to reduce anxiety.
Interesting.
There's also medication that can be prescribed in some cases.
Okay.
But that's something that should always be discussed with your veterinarian.
Right. We're not going to self-medicate our dogs.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
There are some over-the-counter calming supplements available. But again, it's best to talk to your vet before giving your dog anything.
Okay, so we've talked about creating a positive association with being alone.
Right.
We've talked about some things like pheromones and medication. But what about training? Can we actually train our dogs to be less anxious about this?
Absolutely. Training is a crucial part of managing separation anxiety.
Okay.
One technique that's often used is called desensitization.
Okay.
And that involves gradually exposing the dog to the triggers of their anxiety.
Right.
So, for example, you might start by just putting on your shoes or picking up your keys without actually leaving.
Okay.
And then you would gradually increase the intensity of the trigger by opening the door, stepping outside, and then coming back in.
Yeah.
And the goal is to help the dog learn that these cues don't necessarily mean that you're gone for good.
So you're basically teaching them that those things aren't something to be scared of.
Exactly. You're breaking the association between those cues and the panic response.
Gotcha.
And it's really important to do this gradually and at the dog's pace.
Okay.
You don't want to overwhelm them or make them more anxious.
Yeah, you want them to feel safe and comfortable throughout the process.
Exactly.
Okay, so to make this all a little bit more concrete, let's talk about Max.
Okay.
Our source gives us this case study of a dog named Max, and he's struggling with this.
Yeah, poor Max.
So tell us about Max and how he kind of embodies this whole thing.
Well, Max is a 3-year-old Labrador Retriever, and he's always been a bit of a Velcro dog. Always wants to be by his owner's side.
Right.
But his separation anxiety really started to escalate when his owner, Mia, started working from home.
Oh, so he got used to her being there.
Exactly. He got used to having her around all the time.
Yeah.
And then when she had to start going out for errands or appointments, he would just panic.
So what was he doing? What were some of the signs of his anxiety?
Well, he would bark incessantly.
Oh, God.
He would scratch at the door. He would even chew on furniture.
Okay, so classic.
Yeah, classic separation anxiety behavior.
Yeah.
And Mia was really at her wit's end. She didn't know what to do.
Yeah, poor Mia and poor Max.
It was tough for both of them.
What did she do?
Well, she did the right thing and reached out to a certified animal behaviorist.
Okay, so she went to a professional.
Exactly. Yeah, and the behaviorist worked with Mia and Max to develop a treatment plan that included desensitization, counter-conditioning, and medication.
So all the things we've been talking about?
Exactly. It was a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
And the first step was to establish a safe space for Max.
Okay.
So they chose his crate.
Okay.
And they made it super cozy with blankets and toys.
Okay. Like a little den?
Yeah, exactly. And they started feeding him his meals in the crate.
Oh, okay. So he starts to associate the crate with good things.
Exactly. They wanted him to see the crate as a positive place, not a place of punishment.
Yeah.
And then they started working on desensitization.
Okay, so walk us through that.
So they would start by just putting on their shoes.
Right.
Or picking up their keys without actually leaving.
Okay.
And Max would get a little anxious at first.
Sure.
but they would immediately give him a treat or a toy to distract him.
Okay.
And then they would take off their shoes or put down their keys.
Okay.
And he would get another treat.
Gotcha. So he starts to learn, like,
right.
Oh, those things aren't so scary.
Exactly.
And they would do this multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Gradually increasing the intensity of the trigger.
So they would start by just opening the door.
Okay.
Then stepping outside for a few seconds.
Okay.
Then closing the door and coming back in.
Okay.
And each time, Max would get rewarded for staying calm.
Yeah.
And eventually they were able to leave him alone for a few minutes at a time.
Wow. So they were basically retraining his brain to think,
exactly.
Okay, mom's leaving, but cool things are happening.
That's a great way to put it.
So they were giving him treats and toys when she left. So he would start to associate her leaving with something positive.
Exactly. And they also incorporated calming activities like gentle massages and petting before she left to help him relax.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's all about setting him up for success.
So did it work? I mean, did all this actually help Max?
Well, it took time and consistency.
Sure.
But yes, it did work.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
After several weeks of consistent effort, Max's separation anxiety decreased significantly.
That's great.
He no longer exhibited those panicked behaviors when Mia left.
That's amazing.
Instead, he learned to calmly wait for her return. And he even started enjoying those quiet periods alone.
Wow.
He would just curl up in his crate and take a nap.
So he was like, oh, this is my time.
Exactly.
He learned to embrace the alone time.
I love that.
Yeah, it was a real transformation.
So that gives me so much hope for other dogs and their owners who are struggling with this. It shows that it can be done.
Absolutely. Max's story is a testament to the power of understanding, addressing, and managing separation anxiety.
Yeah. And it's a reminder that every dog is an individual.
Right.
What works for Max might not work for every dog.
Exactly.
So it's important to work with a professional
Yes.
to figure out what's best for your particular dog.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about what separation anxiety is. We've talked about some of the causes.
Right.
We've talked about how to recognize it. And we've talked about some of the ways that we can manage it.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that we as owners can do on a daily basis
to help our anxious pups, even outside of a formal treatment plan?
Well, one of the most important things is to make sure your dog is getting enough exercise.
Okay.
A tired dog is a less anxious dog.
Makes sense.
Physical activity helps to burn off excess energy and release those feel-good endorphins.
So if they've already gotten their zoomies out,
exactly,
they're less likely to channel that energy into destructive behavior.
Exactly.
Okay, but what about those of us who have smaller dogs or live in apartments where, long walks or runs aren't always feasible?
Well, even if you can't provide tons of physical exercise, mental stimulation can be just as tiring for a dog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Puzzle toys, indoor games, even short training sessions can help tire them out mentally and keep them engaged.
So like brain games.
Exactly. Brain games are great for dogs.
Mental note, more brain games for my pup.
Good idea.
What about their space, like their actual physical space in the house?
Yeah, that's important too.
Does that play a role?
Make sure your dog has a designated safe space, whether it's their crate, a dog bed, or even a specific room where they feel secure and can relax.
So like a little doggy den.
Exactly. And you can make it extra cozy with blankets, familiar toys, and even a piece of clothing that smells like you.
Well, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it helps them feel more connected to you even when you're not there.
But how do we make sure that they actually like being in that space?
Yeah.
Especially when they're already anxious about us leaving.
It's all about creating positive associations.
Okay.
Spend time with your dog in their safe space.
Okay.
Give them treats. Praise them when they're calm and relaxed there.
Okay.
You can even feed them their meals in their safe space.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it helps them see it as a positive place.
Gotcha. Okay. So we're starting to create that positive association, but what about when it's actually time for us to leave the house?
Okay.
Like any tips for making those departures less stressful?
This is a big one.
Yeah.
It's so important to make your departures and arrivals low-key. Don't make a big fuss when you're leaving or coming back.
Oh, so like no big dramatic goodbyes.
Right over-the-top goodbyes and greetings can actually heighten their anxiety.
Oh, I see.
Imagine if someone was constantly freaking out every time you left the room and then came back.
Right.
It would be pretty unnerving.
Yeah, that would be weird.
Yeah, so try to keep it casual.
Okay.
Almost like it's no big deal.
So even though it breaks our heart to not give them a big hug and kiss.
I know, it's tough.
You feel like, all right, see.
Exactly. You're just stepping out for a bit and you'll be back soon.
Okay.
And when you return, greet them calmly.
Okay.
And wait until they've settled down before showering them with affection.
Gotcha. And what about consistency? Like,
yes.
Is that important too?
Consistency is key.
Okay.
Dogs thrive on routine.
Okay.
Having a consistent schedule for feeding, walks, playtime,
Okay.
and even alone time can help reduce anxiety.
So they know what to expect.
Exactly. It gives them a sense of predictability and control, which is so important for anxious dogs.
So it sounds like we're talking about like a holistic approach here.
Yeah.
We're looking at their physical environment.
Yeah.
We're looking at our own behavior. We're looking at their mental and physical stimulation.
Exactly.
It's all about kind of creating this calm and supportive environment for them.
Exactly. It's about creating a world where they feel safe and secure.
And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yes.
If you're struggling with this.
Absolutely.
You're not alone.
There are so many resources available.
Yeah.
From certified animal behaviorists to online communities where you can connect with other dog owners who understand what you're going through.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the causes and symptoms of separation anxiety to diagnosis management techniques, and even that heartwarming success story about Max.
I love Max's story.
Me too.
It gives me hope.
But before we wrap up,
Okay.
I'd like to leave you with a thought-provoking question.
Oh, I like those.
Thinking about Max's story and everything we've discussed today, what small step could you take today to help your furry friend feel more comfortable when you're not around? It could be as simple as introducing a new puzzle toy, creating a cozy safe space, or working on those low-key departures.
Those are all great ideas.
Yeah. What do you think is like the most important thing for people to keep in mind as they're working on this?
I think the most important thing is to remember that even small steps can make a big difference.
Yeah.
It's about those incremental changes.
Right.
That over time build confidence and reduce stress.
It's not going to happen overnight.
Exactly.
So just be patient.
Be patient, be consistent, and most importantly, be kind to yourself and your dog.
That's great advice.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
That sounds good.
And we're back talking all about canine separation anxiety.
It's a big one.
It is so. We were just talking about Max and how they use desensitization to help him. And I mean, this sounds like they use treats and toys to create that positive association.
Right, exactly. So every time they did one of those trigger things, like putting on shoes or picking up keys, they would pair it with something that Max loved.
So it's like, mom's putting on her shoes, but hey, I'm getting a treat.
Exactly. They were basically changing his emotional response to those cues.
So instead of being afraid, he's like, oh, this is cool.
Exactly. He's starting to think, hey, maybe being alone isn't so bad after all.
I love that. So it's like we're retraining their brains to think differently about the whole situation.
Exactly. It's all about changing those negative associations into positive ones.
That's fascinating. And so what was the outcome for Max? I mean, did all this actually work?
It did, and it's one of those stories that just warms my heart.
Wow.
Yeah. After several weeks of consistent effort, Max's separation anxiety decreased significantly.
That's awesome.
He no longer exhibited those panicked behaviors when Mia left.
That's amazing.
Instead, he learned to calmly wait for her return, and he even started enjoying those quiet periods alone.
What?
Yeah, he would just curl up in his crate and take a nap.
He's like, peace out, Mom.
Exactly.
I'm going to relax.
He learned to embrace the alone time.
That's so cool. That gives me so much hope for other dogs and their owners who are struggling with this.
Me too. It's proof that with the right approach and a lot of love, we can help our dogs overcome separation anxiety and live happier, more relaxed lives.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that every dog is an individual.
Right.
What works for Max might not work for every dog.
Exactly. That's why working with a professional is so important.
It can kind of help you tailor the plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can assess your dog's specific needs and develop a plan that's right for them.
Okay, so we've talked about what separation anxiety is. We've talked about some of the causes.
Yeah.
We've talked about how to recognize it.
Right.
And we've talked about some of the ways that we can manage it. What are some things that we as owners can do on a daily basis to help our anxious pups, even outside of a formal treatment plan?
Well, one of the most important things is to make sure your dog is getting enough exercise.
Okay, so like just making sure they're getting enough physical activity.
Right. A tired dog is a less anxious dog.
That makes sense.
Physical activity helps to burn off excess energy and release those feel-good endorphins, which can significantly reduce anxiety.
So if they've already gotten their zoomies out,
exactly,
they're less likely to be like bouncing off the walls when you leave.
Right. They're more likely to just chill and relax.
Okay, but what about those of us who have smaller dogs or live in apartments where long walks or runs aren't always feasible?
Well, even if you can't provide tons of physical exercise, Mental stimulation can be just as tiring for a dog.
Oh, so like brain games.
Exactly. Brain games are a great way to tire out your dog without having to go for a 5-mile run.
I like that a lot because I live in an apartment, so I'm definitely going to be doing more brain games with my pup. What about their space? Like their actual physical space in the house?
Yeah, that's important too.
Does that play a role?
Make sure your dog has a designated safe space, whether it's their crate, a dog bed, or even a specific room where they feel secure and can relax.
Okay, so it's like we're giving them their own little...
Yeah, like a little sanctuary.
Yeah, a little dog cave.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
And you can make it extra cozy with blankets, familiar toys, and even a piece of clothing that smells like you.
Exactly. It's all about creating a space where they feel comfortable and safe.
Okay, but how do we make sure that they actually like being in that space? You know, especially when they're already anxious about us leaving.
Well, it's all about creating positive associations.
Okay.
So spend time with your dog in their safe space. Give them treats. Praise them when they're calm and relaxed. You can even feed them their meals in their safe space.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it helps them create a positive connection with that space.
So they don't think of it as like the place where I get abandoned.
Exactly. They start to see it as a place of comfort and security.
Okay, so we're starting to create that positive association, but what about when it's actually time for us to leave the house?
Okay.
Like any tips for making those departures less stressful for both of us?
This is a big one. It's so important to make your departures and arrivals low-key.
Okay.
Don't make a big fuss when you're leaving or coming back.
So like no big sappy goodbye.
Exactly. Over-the-top goodbyes and greetings can actually heighten their anxiety.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's like you're feeding into their frenzy.
Oh, I see.
So just trying to keep it casual, almost like it's no big deal.
So even though it breaks our heart, give them a big hug and a kiss.
Yeah.
Just be like, all right, see you later.
Exactly. You're just stepping out for a bit and you'll be back soon.
Okay.
And when you return, greet them calmly and wait until they've settled down before showering them with affection.
Gotcha. And what about consistency? Like, is that important too?
Consistency is key. Dogs thrive on routine. Having a consistent schedule for feeding walks, playtime, and even alone time can help reduce anxiety.
So they know what to expect.
Exactly. It gives them a sense of predictability and control, which is so important for anxious dogs.
So it sounds like we're talking about like a holistic approach here.
Yeah.
We're looking at their physical environment.
Right.
We're looking at our own behavior. We're looking at their mental and physical stimulation.
Exactly.
It's all about kind of creating this calm and supportive environment for them.
Exactly. It's about meeting their needs on multiple levels.
I like that. And I think it's important to remember that there's no shame in asking for help.
Right.
If you're struggling with this.
Absolutely.
You're not alone.
There are so many resources available, from certified animal behaviorists to online communities where you can connect with other dog owners who understand what you're going through.
And sometimes just hearing other people's stories and knowing that you're not the only one going through this can be really helpful.
It can be incredibly validating and empowering.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, from the causes and symptoms of separation anxiety to diagnosis management techniques.
We have.
And even that heartwarming success story about Max.
Max is the best.
He is.
I love that little guy.
But before we wrap up, I'd like to leave you with a thought-provoking question.
Ooh, I like those.
Thinking about Max's story and everything we've discussed today, what small step could you take today to help your furry friend feel more comfortable when you're not around?
That's a good one.
It could be as simple as introducing a new puzzle toy, creating a cozy safe space, or working on those low-key departures.
I think those are all great starting points.
Yeah.
The key is to choose something that feels manageable and then commit to doing it consistently.
Yeah. What do you think is like the most important thing for people to keep in mind as they're working on this?
I think the most important thing is to be patient and to remember that progress takes time.
Yeah. It's not going to happen overnight.
It's a journey, not a destination.
I like that.
And it's important to celebrate the small victories along the way.
Yeah, because even those small improvements can make a big difference in your dog's quality of life.
Absolutely. And in your own quality of life, too.
So true, because when our dogs are happy, we're happy.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. It's so rewarding when you see those little wins. You know, it just makes it all worthwhile.
Oh, absolutely. It's the best feeling.
Yeah. So to kind of sum up everything we've talked about today, I mean, we've gone over a lot.
Yeah, we have.
What are like the key takeaways that you would want our listeners to remember?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that separation anxiety is a real condition.
Okay.
It's not just dogs being naughty or trying to get attention.
Right.
It's a genuine fear response, and it can be very distressing for both the dog and the owner.
Yeah, so we need to take it seriously.
Absolutely. And the good news is that it's treatable.
That's great.
With the right approach and support, most dogs can learn to cope with being alone.
And it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right? Every dog is different, and what works for one dog might not work for another.
So it's important to be flexible and work with a professional.
Absolutely. A certified animal behaviorist can help you develop a tailored plan that addresses your dog's specific needs.
Okay, so we've got to remember it's a real thing.
Yes.
It's treatable, but we need to get professional help.
Exactly.
To make sure that we're doing the right things for our dog.
Right. And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, there's no shame in it.
No, there's not. It's a sign of a responsible dog owner.
And I love that we talked about Max's story.
Me too. It's such a great example of how even severe cases of separation anxiety can be successfully managed.
Yeah, it gives me so much hope for other dogs and their owners who are struggling with this.
It should. It really should.
So to our amazing listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into canine separation anxiety.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
We hope you found it informative and helpful.
We hope so.
And remember, if you're dealing with this with your own dog, you're not alone.
You're not.
There are resources available and there's hope.
Absolutely. And we believe in you and your dog.
That's great. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into the fascinating world of dogs.
Can't wait.
Until then, happy training. And remember, every dog can learn and thrive with a little love, patience, and understanding.
That's the truth.
Thanks for joining us.